Hey, today we're talking about when not to buy a home. If you're new here, make sure you like and subscribe. Hi, I'm Becca Summers with Seasons Real Estate, and today's conversation is when not to buy a home. So I realize I'm a real estate agent and I should be encouraging you to buy a home, but in the grand scheme, I'm thinking long term and I want to look out for you. So there are plenty of times when you probably shouldn't buy a home. The first one is if you're planning on moving out of state in the next 2 to 3 years, because it takes time to make enough money to recoup the cost of selling a property. Now, worst case scenario, it could cost you up to 10% of the property's value to sell it, paying buyer's closing costs, paying listing agents, buyer's agents, and title fees. So if it costs you 10%, it's going to take you a couple years to recoup that. So if you're just going to be here for a short time, it's probably not the best idea to buy a property, unless you plan on keeping it as a rental. But then you have to weigh out the pros and cons if you want to be an out-of-state landlord. The second reason not to buy a property is if you don't know where you're going to end up with your job. So if you're just finishing up school and you have not been hired yet and you don't know if you're going to end up in Utah County or Salt Lake County, it's probably not a good idea to buy a property. Because when it comes to commute time, if you've been here long enough, you know that we only have the I-15, so it's really hard to get north to south. So you're going to probably want to be closer to your job. The third reason not to buy a property is if you're currently living with family and it's free to live there. Now, obviously, there comes a certain point where you don't want to keep living with family and you want to move on and buy a property, but this is a great time to save money. And I know there's a lot of pressure out there to be your own person and to buy your own property, but if you're living rent-free and you can save thousands of dollars a month toward your own property, it's a great time to save your money. Another reason not to buy a home is if you're in a crappy relationship, meaning if you are possibly getting divorced or if you're dating someone that you don't foresee being with them for the next 5 to 7 years. Because when it comes to selling a property, when you're in a rough relationship, it gets a whole lot harder to sell the property. Now, if you're married and you're getting divorced, it's a little bit easier because there's rules around how the property is going to be split and the judge is going to decide. But if you're dating and you buy a property, it's a whole lot harder to sell the property when you're both broken up, but you don't have a legal decree telling you how to dispose of the asset. So if you're not in a very strong relationship currently, I would not advise you to buy a property. Or if you buy a property, buy it in your own name and don't buy it together. So then if something comes up, it's easier to move out and move on. If you're looking to buy a property or want to even have this conversation based off your personal situation, feel free to reach out to me here. I love helping guide people through the first time home buying process.